So a couple of years ago, I got invited to attend a small event in Sioux Falls to get to know a candidate that was running for mayor. And just to be clear, I'm not a super political person, but the man who invited me to this event is a good friend of mine. And also, and more importantly, he said that there would be food. So I went, and the event was a lot like you might expect. It was just a big room filled with a bunch of people. There were some chairs, tables, and those big silver containers filled with food. You know what I'm talking about. If you've been to like a hotel, nice wedding, something like that, they have those slide openings, so you're never really sure what's inside, but you know it's something spectacular, right? When I know I'm about to eat and I see a big silver container, I can't even have an adult conversation. I'm just wondering what magic could be under the lid. It's like finding a locked treasure chest. You're just like, what's inside? This time, if you're curious, it was heavy appetizers. So anyway, we ate, and then the candidate got up and shared about some of the issues and some of the strategies that they were going to try to deal with some of those issues. And then at the end, they opened things up for questions from the crowd. So anyone could ask any question about any topic. So the candidate's getting peppered with questions about our economy and the roads and schools. Honestly, at this point, I'm pretty bored, and I'm just wondering if anyone would notice if I went up and got yet another chicken wing. But then a new question came up, and it came from a man sitting in a wheelchair. And this man asked, "Hey, Mr. Candidate, what are you going to do to make our city more wheelchair accessible?" He said, "There is limited public transportation. What are you going to do for people with limited mobility to get around our city better?" And in that moment, I decided that I never want to be mayor. And you might be thinking, well, no one asked you to be mayor. Why don't you just go have another chicken wing? And you're right about that. No one did ask me to be mayor, but here's why I would never want to be mayor. Because to that point, the questions that people were asking the candidate were pretty obvious to me. They're complicated issues, roads and the economy, those types of things. But it's pretty obvious to me that we needed to deal with these things. But this man's question, I didn't even consider, and I was overwhelmed. Not because it's not an important question, but because it is a super important question. And it was the first of many super important questions that I rarely even consider. People ask questions about sex trafficking. They ask questions about public safety. They ask questions about our city's drug problem. They were like, meth, are we really on it? And later we found out, thankfully, yes, we are on it. So by the end of the event, again, I was just overwhelmed, and all I could think was, I never want to be mayor because I can't care about all this stuff. My heart and my soul do not have enough room. I cannot carry the weight of all of these issues. And you might be disappointed by how I was feeling in that moment, or you might resonate with how I was feeling, but what I was feeling is actually called something. And it's what we're going to spend our time talking about today. If we've not met before, my name is Travis. I get to be our campus pastor for our Sertoma campus on the beautiful and sunny west side of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And if we've not met, I'm glad to meet you. And if we have met, I'm so glad that all of you are here to get to finish up our message series that we've been calling What in the World, talking about the issues that we all face in our world that make us say, what in the world? And the issue that we're looking at today and the feeling that I was experiencing at that event is called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue, here's a definition if you don't know it. Compassion fatigue is a condition characterized by emotional and physical exhaustion, leading to a diminished ability to empathize or feel compassion for others. Essentially, we get presented with so much stuff to care about that we can end up not caring about anything. We get presented with so much stuff to care about that we can end up not caring about anything. Now, compassion fatigue is a big deal in the medical community, right? Doctors and nurses, they see patient after patient. How do they keep caring after they see yet another kid with cancer? After they see yet another car accident victim come across their table? How do they keep caring? Same deal in the mental health community, right? Therapists, they hear trauma after trauma from people. How do they not get emotionally exhausted after they keep hearing thing after thing, tragedy after tragedy, trauma after trauma? Here's how one therapist described their experience. He says, "We have not been directly exposed to the trauma, but we hear the story told with such intensity, or we hear similar stories so often that we feel the feelings of our clients." Now, I've said a couple of times, I never want to be mayor. And again, wisely, no one has asked me to be. And no one's asked me to be a medical professional or a mental health professional either. And maybe you're not a mayor or a doctor or a nurse or a therapist either. Maybe no one has asked you to be those things either. But I can guarantee that you and I have been asked this of us. We have been asked to experience a trauma. We have been asked to hear about one. We have been asked to listen to a story told with such intensity that we were asked to feel the feelings of other people. And because of that, we are susceptible to compassion fatigue. And just to be clear if I wasn't, and why we're even talking about this today, compassion fatigue is not good. Getting too tired to care for other people is not good. There are people in our world that desperately need us to care for them. And you and I desperately need other people to care about us as well. But again, some of us have been exposed to so much trauma, or we've read about so much trauma in the news, or we've scrolled past so much trauma on our social media feeds that we are too tired to care anymore. So my hope and my prayer today is that we would get some tools that might help limit our exposure and might limit our chances of experiencing compassion fatigue. And to get started, I have an important question for you. They say that an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So before we dive too far into this issue, my question is the trauma that you are exposing yourself to in your life, in the world, in the news, on your social media feed, is the trauma you are exposing yourself to necessary for you? Or maybe a better or clearer way to ask it, is the weight that you are carrying in your life yours to carry? Is the weight that you're carrying yours to carry? Because if you're like me, and you can sometimes get overwhelmed by all the issues around you, that it just seems like it's just thing after thing, trauma after trauma, tragedy after tragedy. I just have to ask one more time, is the weight that you are carrying yours to carry? Is the trauma that you are exposing yourself to necessary for you? Because again, doctors and nurses, they can't control the trauma they're exposed to. They can't control when another sick kid comes into their room. They can't control when another car accident victim comes across their table. They can't control the trauma they're exposed to, but can you? Can you? Here's why I ask. There's this weird phenomenon in our culture where we feel like we are required to know everything. There's this cultural standard that we are to live up to, that we are supposed to know the latest everything, right? Even if it involves people we will never meet, in places we will never go, the standard that we are to live up to is if it is able to be known, then we have to know it. But again, my question is, do you? Do you have to know? Do you have to know about that wife who lost her husband and car in that car accident across town? Do you have to know about that? Do you have to know about that bomb that exploded in that country that you'll never go to, that killed all of those innocent people? Do you have to carry that weight? Do you have to know about the latest death count for worldwide COVID-19 deaths? Do you have to know about that woman who was raped in that town next to yours? All these tragedies. Every murder, every genocide, every fire and bomb, every moral failure. Do you have to know? Do you have to carry the weight of all of those things, these tragic things, these things that should never happen to anyone? Do you have to know about them? Because there is a cost to knowing them. We only have so much capacity for compassion. Our heart and soul can only carry so much weight. So if we're going to care about people, if we're going to have compassion for people in places that we will never go and people that we will never know, then know that it comes at a cost of the people that we see every day in the places that we go every day. So if we want to avoid compassion fatigue, a question that we must ask is the weight that we are carrying ours to carry? I want to move on to another point, and it comes with another question, and that question is, what does it mean to have compassion? If we want to limit our exposure to compassion fatigue, if we don't want to get tired of caring for other people, we should define what it means to care. Like when I asked you that question about, do you have to know about all those different things? You might have been thinking, well, yes, of course I need to know about that wife who lost her husband and daughter in a car accident. Of course I need to know about that town that was hit by an explosion that killed all those innocent people. I need to know because I need to care. I need to be a good person. I need to care for other people. Or maybe if you're a follower of Jesus, like Jesus said that I'm supposed to care for my neighbor. I need to know all those things because I need to care about them. But what I might suggest to you today is that those two things aren't the same thing. That knowing about all of those things might not be the same thing. And here's what I mean. So my wife and I, we went hiking in the Black Hills of South Dakota a couple of weeks ago. We went with some friends. And I just have to say, if you've not hiked in the Black Hills of South Dakota, do yourself a favor and go. I've lived in South Dakota for over 30 years. I had no idea the jaw-dropping beauty of my state. The lakes, the trees, the mountains, incredible. But do you know what the Black Hills of South Dakota also has? Mountain lions and rattlesnakes. There's even a few bears. I saw one entering the park. He was holding a sign that said, "Risk of fire high today." So there's even bears in these places. All these scary things. But were my wife and I, were we thinking about these things when we were on our hike? No, I'm not ruining my panoramic view, worried about getting eaten by a mountain lion. But they're in there. And yet my actions would tell the world that I don't care about them. Some people care about mountain lions. Maybe you care about mountain lions. You're like, hey, I'm not hiking in there. I'm not getting touched by a mountain lion. Those people, they care about mountain lions. But my wife and I, we don't care about mountain lions. We don't care about bears either. We care about preventing forest fires, but we do not care about Smokey. And this is a silly example, right? But you get my point. What is compassion? Well, compassion is a lot of things, but for sure, compassion requires action from us. Caring, it requires action from us. And this is important to know if we want to avoid compassion fatigue, because even though our culture might tell us that we need to know everything about everything, and that knowing about everything means that you care about those things, that's not what God says. Knowing doesn't mean caring. In fact, if you listen to James, the brother of Jesus, knowing doesn't mean anything. Here's what he says. He says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." Is dead. What James is saying, it flies directly in the face of our culture, directly in the face of how many of us live our life. James says knowing all of this stuff doesn't mean caring. Knowing all of this stuff sounds really good, but it doesn't mean anything, right? Did you hear about that couple? Did you hear about that couple that a tragic thing happened to? Man, I sure hope they're doing okay. Man, did you hear about that group, that horrible thing that happened to them? Man, I sure hope they stay warm and well fed. I sure hope that they're being cared for. I sure hope that they get through this. And James, Jesus' brother, again, says no. No, that sounds really good. That seems like it's really good, but it's dead. It means nothing. If you're not going to do anything about the information that you are exposing yourself to, then that information, it doesn't actually mean anything to you. And again, here's why this matters. Here's why this matters. Because if we continue to carry weight that isn't ours, if we continue to strap ourselves with all this weight that isn't ours, we're going to be too tired to carry the weight that is ours. If we keep carrying weight that isn't ours, we're going to be too tired to carry the weight that is. So how do we do this? Right? How do we start carrying weight that is ours? How do we find what weight is ours? Well, thankfully, Jesus modeled this so well for us. I often say this whenever I get the opportunity to speak, but we cannot overstate how important it is that God came down to earth. That Jesus walked the earth perfectly as a human being, just like you and I. See, we get so confused sometimes. We feel like we just have to guess at what the right thing is often, but we forget. Like Jesus, he was a person. And he lived his life perfectly. And it was so helpful for us to look at some of the things that he did while he was here, because he was never overwhelmed with compassion fatigue. He never got tired of caring for people. And yet he did care for so many people. And he did help so many people. So what did he do? What did Jesus do while he was here? Well, he did a lot of things, but one of the things that he did is he was present with other people. He was present with other people, meaning that he was willing to stop. He was willing to pause. He was willing to create space for other people. Do we do this? When we experience people who are hurting around us, do we pause? Do we create space? Jesus did this all the time, whether they were just wondering, like, what do I do next in my life? Whether they were dealing with some sort of hurt or pain, whether it's physical or emotional, loss of a loved one, loss of something else important in their life, loss of vision or an ailment they were experiencing. Jesus, he paused for people. He listened to them. And this being present, this is an action. And we know this if we've ever experienced somebody being present for us, when they've given us their eye contact, when they've asked important questions, probing questions that let us know that we are seen and heard and valuable to them, we know that's an action. We know that matters so much. And that was something Jesus did all the time. And it's something that we can do right now to show compassion for other people. We can be present with them. Another thing Jesus did that we can do is he helped people with a practical need. Again, Jesus, God with skin on, who came down to earth. He helped people with practical needs. We can learn so much from him. And I'm going to share some of these things, and they might sound really silly and really trite to you, but Jesus did them, so we should pay close attention to them. So the first thing, Jesus fed people. Jesus cooked for people. We all know about how he fed like 5,000 people or whatever. I'm not talking about the miracle part of it. There's a story about how after he came back to life, he just started cooking fish on the beach for his disciples. He cooked for other people. We can do this. We know people in our lives who could use a warm meal. We know people in our lives who need to eat. We can cook for other people. We can feed other people. Here's another one that Jesus did. Jesus got other people jobs. Right? He just walked around. He's like, hey, you're a tax collector now. Do you like that job? No, you don't like it anymore? Why don't you come follow me? I got a job for you. You don't like fishing for fish? You're going to fish for people now. Come with me. Let's do this thing. I've got a purpose for you. You don't have purpose right now? You feel like you're in a dead-end job right now? Come with me. I got a job for you. We can do this. We can help somebody with a practical need like this. We can invite people to come work with them. Those of us who have the ability, we can hire people. And finally, parents, you'll like this one. Jesus, he cared for other people's kids. We remember hearing stories of this growing up. We grew up in the church, right? The children were always gathered around Jesus. He was giving them their time. He was teaching them. He was investing in them. Those aren't his kids. Those aren't his kids, and yet he was pouring into them. We all know a mom or a dad that could use an afternoon away from their kids. I know that I certainly could, right? We can do this. And again, these might seem like really small things, maybe really trite examples to you. Unless you need a meal, unless you're hungry and you need somebody to feed you, unless you're out of work and you need a job, unless you're so strapped and you just need somebody to help out and watch your kids, then all of a sudden those really small things, they become really big. And those really small things that you don't think make any impact, make a huge impact. And I would argue that that is why Jesus did them. And that is why he modeled them for us. The final thing that I will share, that if I'm being really, really honest, I'm probably the worst at. The final thing that Jesus did to show compassion for other people is he prayed for them. He prayed for them. A group of guys and I were talking about caring for other people in a men's group over at Sertoma the other day. And one of my good friends, he was saying that his wife and him were eating dinner at an outdoor restaurant. And while they were eating, there was a man who came walking by along the sidewalk that didn't seem to be doing very well. He seemed agitated. He was talking to himself. He was yelling at times, and yet nobody was around him. And my friend said him and his wife, they felt terrible. They wanted to help the man, but they didn't know what to do. We've all been in situations like that, right? Our heart breaks for that person, but what do? What can you do? So we actually started this same exact conversation that you and I are having right now. We started looking at Jesus' life. What did he do? How would he handle a situation like that? And as we continue to talk, my friend was like, well, geez, I guess I could have prayed for him. I guess I could have prayed for him. And we all do this, right? We feel like we can't do anything. And so we don't do anything. And yet the crazy thing about prayer is that that's actually what it's for. It's for those of us who know that we can do nothing, but believe that God can do anything. That's what prayer is for. For those of us who believe and know that we can do nothing on our own, but also believe and know that God can do anything. So one of the things that Jesus did that we can do is we can pray for other people to show them compassion. I'll close with this. Jesus did do one thing that you and I can't do. Jesus did do one thing that is unattainable for you and I. Jesus died for every single person so that we can be free of our shame, of our guilt, so that we no longer have to carry the weight of all the mistakes that we've ever made. Jesus died for those things. And you and I can't do that. You and I can't do that. But Jesus, again, he has the power to restore every broken person and every broken issue that will ever happen. He has the strength to carry the weight of every person who will ever live, every issue that will ever happen. You and I, though, we can't do that. So right now, I just want to give us some permission to drop some weight. I just want to give you and I some permission to drop some weight. We see and experience so much trauma, but so much of the weight that we're carrying right now, it's not ours to carry. So that relationship that you're not involved in, that you can't fix, that you can't do anything about, that weight, you can drop that weight. That weight is not yours to carry. That news story that you keep reading about over and over and over again, and it's just crushing you, the weight is bearing down on you, but you know there's really nothing that you can do about it. You can drop that weight. It's not yours to carry. That decision that person made, that horrible action that they did, that you can't change. And that person that you will never know. Quit carrying that weight. It's not yours. You can drop that one. You can drop it. All of these weights that bear down on us. Jesus is strong enough. He's powerful enough to carry the weight of every murder, every genocide, every fire, every bomb, every tragedy and trauma that will ever happen with people that we will never know, in places that we will never go. Jesus has that weight. We don't have to carry it anymore, so we can drop it. We no longer have to carry that weight anymore. Jesus gave his life for everyone and everything that will ever happen. And we don't have to worry about it anymore. But you and I can give our life to someone. You and I, we can't carry the weight of everyone, but we can carry the weight of someone. We can carry our share. And we know this, right? We know we are surrounded with trauma every single day. We don't have to scan newspaper articles for it. We don't have to scroll through social media to find trauma. We know that it's in our families, in our friend groups. We know it's in the chairs of the people right next to us. We know it's in the chat rooms that we're in right now. We are surrounded by people that need our help, and they are our weight to carry. So my question for you today, my final question for all of us, is who is our weight to carry? Who is our weight to carry? As one of your pastors, one of the best privileges and greatest gifts that I get to do is I get the opportunity to carry the weight of other people. People come to me with the weight of a broken marriage. People come to me with the weight of a sick child or loved one. They come to me with the weight of people who have passed away. And yet we all know that there are so many people who aren't coming to me. And they're not coming to any other pastor, but they are in your life. And they are hurting just the same. And they need you. And once more, they are your weight to carry. We might not be able to give our life to everyone like Jesus did, but we can give our life for someone. Who is the person that God is asking you to be present with? Who is the person that God is asking you to help with a practical need? Who's God asking you to pray for? They are your weight to carry. Again, we can't carry the weight of everyone and everything, but we can carry the weight of someone or something. And we can start today. Would you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you for your power. We thank you that you're strong enough to carry all of our issues, all of our burdens. You're strong enough to carry the weight of our shame, of our guilt, of our disappointment. You can carry it all. God, but right now, would you show each and every one of us what is our weight to carry? Who is our weight to carry? Who are the people that you put right in front of us in the places that we go every day and the people that we see every day? Who is our weight to carry? What is our weight to carry, God? Thank you that you take care of all the rest. You provide people to help with all the rest, God, but whose is ours? Who have you given us, Lord? Thank you so much for Jesus. Thank you so much for his life. Thank you so much for what he did on the cross for us. We love you. We pray in the powerful name of Jesus. Amen.